introduce our valuable guests today who are going to present to you this work. I start with Leontine Waganar. Leontine is an expert and entrepreneur in the field of fashion design, and she has been active in the industry since 1988. She is well-seasoned and very well-rounded expert in this field. She is the founder and owner of a consulting company that operates in the area of creating and branding in the fashion industry. She is also the chief visionary officer at the Italian design and creative agency in China. And she is an appointed member to the International Expert Advisory Council for the European and American Chamber of Commerce in Guangzhou, China. But Leontine is also a guest lecturer at Saxion University in Netherlands, and where she teaches trend forecasting, textile innovation, and visual merchandising. Next to Leontine is Rens Staap, who is the business development manager at the Dutch Association of Clothing and Textile Association, the Modint. During 35 years of working with Modint, Rens has been actively following the technology and innovation trends in the Dutch textile and fashion sector. He started as a market researcher, analyzing statistics and writing reports on the fashion markets. And from there, he started working on development of strategies for companies and the sector. Rens worked on many projects supporting Dutch exporters and public relations for the sector. He is now responsible for the purchase of market intelligence and guidance on research projects at Modint. Next to this, Rens has been part of projects reorganizing the supply chain through electronic data interchange, together with the GS1 organization and trade associations in retail and wholesale since 1990. Since this time, he also worked on numerous research programs, assisting students from 3 specialized fashion and textile polytechnics, the Saxion, the TMO Doorn and Amphi, and UAS Amsterdam. During the last few years, Rens gave shape to the Netherlands Next Fashion and Textile Innovation Network for Modint. In these programs, companies, universities of applied sciences, universities, NGOs, individual designers, specialists, and government organizations, they all contribute to innovations in the clothing and textile industry. This innovation network has been focusing on themes such as use of new materials, design for sustainability, new production techniques, social conditions, wearable technology, exchange of data through the supply chain, digital design, and consumer attitudes towards new developments in the sector. Thank you, Rens, and welcome, Rens. Next to Rens, Matthias Kriete. Matthias' career is fully focused on fashion industry. He was graduated in 1997, and since then he has worked for the Dutch Fashion Industry Association, the Fenecon, which was then later replaced by Modint. And he has also briefly worked at the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs. At Modint, he led the establishment of a consulting department focused on compliance support, trade policy, and sourcing. He helped the Dutch fashion industry to get full recognition as part of creative industry and one of the top sectors in the Netherlands. Matthias also sat on the board of Dutch Design, Fashion, and Architecture, as well as the Federation for Dutch Creative Industries. As of 2015, Matthias became International Apparel Federation's Secretary General, expanding the scope of the Federation and building new partnerships for the Federation with other national associations and with multilateral organizations. IAF now represents the interests of apparel industry associations from over 60 countries. Matthias has worked on projects in Romania, Hungary, Macedonia, Ethiopia, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And he is now the initiator of a major global project that is carried out together with the GIZ on the improvement of apparel manufacturers' payment and delivery terms. Lastly, together with IAF member organizations, Matthias every year organizes the influential IAF World Fashion Convention, which acts as a major global industry meeting place as well as knowledge platform. So welcome, Leontine, Matthias, and Rens, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me kick off, Nima, and I see you are starting the presentation. Yes, there we are. Thank you very much for this opportunity to tell something about the work we've been doing in Pakistan and for UNIDO, and of course, welcome to all the people listening at this moment and watching our presentation. Leontine will tell some more about the actual work that we've been doing in Pakistan later. The project we did was extended by a benchmark about which Matthijs will tell something more, but and I will do a short introduction of us and of the project. I think the speakers have been already been introduced to you, and so have Modent and IAF. A short word on this. We both work in international supply chains. We are interconnected very much because Modent is a member of International Apparel Federation, and we even share our offices in Zeist in Holland. So Matthijs and I meet quite frequently. And the last few years, we come together around topics like a sustainable clothing and textiles industry, upcoming due diligence legislation around the world. We are putting an extended producer responsibility legislation into place in Holland together with the government, but that will also have international implications, of course. International Apparel Federation is developing fair contracting, but then together in their network, for instance, with the German organization, GIZ, I think it's called, Matthijs. That's where we both use our networks to complement each other's activities and easily find each other. And that's how we could quite easily pick up this project. If you show the next slide, you see that we've formed a team of industry experts from our network, starting with Leontine. I knew that she had been, we started together at our office 30 years ago in traineeships, but then, well, we always kept contact. I knew she was working on design projects in China. From there, she introduced me to her network in China. People named here Jochen Michael Thomas, who's a strategist and very good in project management. Damon, who did a lot of the design and the building that needed to take place in Punjab. And a friend of Leontine was Sinette Hessling, who is a designer, but also knows a lot about human resources and hiring of personnel in the design field. So that made a very nice team. And from there, I could also work with some colleagues of mine, Antonio Barbieri, who's a sourcing expert, Nienke Steen on sustainability, and Miriam, who knows a lot about digital design and industrial processes. So that's how we formed the team, because Modent works with 20 people, and we can't do this alone. So we need our network. Well, what we do. First of all, of course, we had to talk about the strategy and establish the needs of the ADSC. A lot of that work was already done by the Punjab government, by UNIDO. And then the actual work began by the actual building of a center, the process of buying of inventory and the hiring and training of staff. That was quite a lot of work to do, especially when you do it from Holland and from China in Pakistan. But okay, the world is a village, so I think we managed quite well to do so. And from there, we started to develop the activities, mainly in the fields of marketing of the center, setting up the first designs, teaching and training the people who were working there. Then some short words on the next slide. Yeah, on the International Apparel Federation, which was in time, kind of a backbone of the whole project. You mentioned Pregmia. Well, they are colleagues of mine. I know that the chairman of Pregmia is in London at this moment and will visit Amsterdam and will visit one of the schools that you mentioned. So how about networking there? So through Pregmia, through International Apparel Federation, we were pointed at this project. And in the middle, in time of the project, International Apparel Federation organized their convention in Lahore, and that was exactly the right time for us to present the ADRC, as we have called the center. And then after the first project was concluded, it was extended by a benchmark not so much of industries, but more of the organization supporting industries internationally. And because of the great network Matthijs has there within all our colleagues and other organizations internationally, IAF again was the partner to do that part. So that's how we went along. Now, I understand that there are people who work in the international textiles and in the global fashion industry. So just a short word on the situation there. Many of the producing countries depend highly on producing high volumes against low cost prices per piece. I mean, that's the name of the game. The higher the volume, the lower the price. But in the end, you're stuck with a lot of sell-off. You have long lead times. The dependency of the manufacturer is big when you look at the powerful brand buying. So that's not an ideal situation. And especially in the last few years, in the whole COVID situation, made very clearly how vulnerable this system is. So on the next slide, we see the topics that the international industry is coping with. We know we have no living wages. There are social problems. Safety and health are big problems in producing countries. We don't know where to get our raw materials. They're ending. I mean, how are we going to recycle them? How are we going to do something about the circular economy and about circular industry? And of course, there is a lot to be done in the production processes when you look at the use of chemicals and the use of water. And these are things that are dealt with all across the world, you know, in all kind of in all parts of the fashion industry. So we see now that international standards of sustainability are coming in place, and that's probably the Pakistan situation. If you want to survive there, you need to innovate. That means branding and adding value to the industry is most important for producing countries and producing. Well, it's not the country that's producing; it's the producing companies, of course. So my hope would be for future that we could move towards a lower production and better margins, which are better dealt with through the whole supply chain, and less dependency or more interdependency, let's put it that way, between brands and manufacturers. Yeah, this is how we look at circularity, how we look at innovation. Exactly these themes were discussed this morning for 2.5 hours within the innovation platform of Eurotex, which is the European organization, let's say the European International Apparel Federation. And they added things like, recycling, energy use, the use of bio-based materials. What are we going to do with technical textiles? How are we going to recycle those? Those are very important themes at this moment. And I always come back to these 3 circles you see on the left. It's about design, it's about digitization, it's about sustainability, and there where these coincide, that's where it really gets important and what really gets interesting, because that means you will be digitizing your design, or you will be designing for sustainability, or you will be digitizing towards sustainability and talk about transparency and traceability. And well, those are the fields we like to think about when we think of innovation, and that's the fields that we think about when we talk to other industries and say, well, hey, where can the industry move to and how can industries develop? That's a short introduction from my side. And now probably Leontien can tell more about what we've actually been doing, and then focus on the design and the branding. Thank you very much. You're muted.
Good afternoon, unmuted now. Thank you to giving us the floor to present this wonderful project we did together. The first trip to Pakistan with a part of our team with Johan, Damon and myself. As you can see on the picture here, Johan is explaining to the minister about our plans, and of course we needed to do some research on the market in Lahore, and visiting some small medium enterprises, local fashion companies, fashion schools, and meeting of course with all stakeholders involved, such as Prechmea, CDI and the local UNIDO people, in order to prepare the right roadmap to establish the ADRC. Next, please. Designing an interior plan and layout. Being in the actual building, we decided to build an annex, and which you can see on the in the middle part, let's say, of the picture. And then if you tap, there will be some, yeah. So we designed the logo, of course, in the first place, but then we also decided to color the walls inside of the building, which should give a very fresh and fashionable appeal. Next picture, next slide. Yeah, so we developed also we needed to identify a service portfolio, which was already mentioned earlier. And of course, we needed to do some marketing. And we did a few times an awareness raising campaign in the Prechmea house, and explaining on all services and backgrounds of the ADRC, Apparel Design and Research Center. The next slide. Designing a brand identity for the ADRC. So the visual identity of the Apparel Design and Research Center. So you see the logo design, design how the website should look like on the mobile version and on the computer version. But it was also a very clear guideline and example to set up a brand identity for local firms. This is the next. We started the recruitment process, managing the recruitment process of the design center's personnel. We had foreseen in the importance of hiring a more technical designer who needed to have knowledge about paper pattern making, sizing and grading. And this is vital if you want to work with 3D design software, which is has become a very important tool. Assembling the team, and looking after complementary skills. Worked with the 12 archetypes by Carl Jung. Is also a way to define the strengths and weaknesses within the team. Next slide. Training the staff in Lahore, once hired. And the next slide is about some content. So we started to train them on the design cycle. So the red part is the how to prepare. You do your trend research on fashion, but also on environmental and social trends. You need to set your sustainable development goals. As sustainability starts with design. So it's important to work like that. And then it also has to do with, for example, corporate social responsibility and transparency in the supply chain. Anyway, I will come back on that later. You're going to design your mood board trend colors, and later actually we added one which is called supplier frame, as when it comes to distances and where does your fabric comes from, where does your accessories are coming from, that you don't have to fly all these or bring all these elements together from all continents of the world. So it will be good to have a supply frame in a network as close as possible. Range build-up, you see also in the green part. So carryover styles, repeat of your bestsellers, define your basics, fashion items and eye catchers. It all, it all has to do with the percentage of sustainable garments you need to develop. For example, by using dead stock materials or upcycle or refinish your dead stock garments, such as Diesel has done with a capsule collection they had last summer. We can go to the next slide. And in the bigger picture, the whole fashion cycle. So we pointed out the red and the green part, but of course it all has to do with marketing, how to do a photo shoot, and your bulk production. And after all, you also need to know how your sales went, because that has effect on your next collection. So your bestsellers, you always bring also to your next collection, which is important for your for the way how to earn money, let's say. And the next slide, please. Strategies for design. To enlighten this a little bit, because design to last is very important. High quality garments, which stay longer. 3D design is saving a lot of footprint and cost. For example, I will show some examples of 3D design later, but at least you can say that the 3D gives a much more better impression of the actual garment. So you're saving cost in making samples, for example. AI in trend forecasting has also become more important. So linking data to your forecast to manage your stock, for example. So if you look on the socials, how your collection is selling, or even you can even start with an animation, then of course that will have effect on the amount of garments you are going to produce, and saving, also saving costs and saving footprint with this. The next slide, please. We provided European trend reports to be as well connected as possible to the European fashion trends, tailor-made for the ADRC, to be fully informed on what direction you should design a collection. Next one. Guiding the building. Every time we visit, we checked the progress of the building, which was quite challenging. The next slide. But after all, it worked quite well. So you see here a very nice and clean environment and fully equipped interior. The next. And meeting with clients here at the ADRC. I obviously wasn't there, but of course they had sent me the photos. During pandemic, as you can see, people wearing masks. The launching of the ADRC during IAF convention in 2019. And we were presenting here the service portfolio to the Minister Abdul Razak Dawood. I found his business card. Yeah, so it was a very successful launch, we must say, because we already made many contacts where our team could work with after we left back to the Netherlands. And we also yeah, this is very, yeah. And we also did some presentation during IAF to enlighten a bit on the services and actual need working with a design center for small, medium enterprises. Digitization, so working with Cloud 3D, the digital design software became USP for the center. It was quite funny that during the pandemic, of course the staff couldn't work always in the ADRC, and well, one of the designers decided to learn about Cloud 3D, and I will show you some results at the end of my presentation on this. But yeah, as people, I'm not sure if you are very much informed about working with 3D design software, but at least it gives a much better actual idea of the garment, and you save a lot of footprint with this as well. Now, some assignments we did with the ADRC, with the Apparel Design and Research Center, and in the beginning, we also helped them with starting up these projects once they had a new client. So what we did was also that we encouraged Pragmea to set up a sustainable department. And actually, as we speak, we are actually still working every now and then with the ADRC, because since the sustainable department has recently set up by Pragmea, I asked them to link with the ADRC to provide and at the end to provide workshop for the Pakistani clientele and industry, which is of course very valuable information. Yeah, at the moment. Branding and design, so helping manufacturers setting up their own brand, and training the trainers. So by training the staff of the ADRC, they could train their clients and future clients yeah, on the specific suspects and content we trained them on. From manufacturer to brand. So this is one of the assignments they did. And actually many more were following in this area. So manufacturers, they starting their own label. So by adding design, you add value to a product, of course. And we experienced this in China as well for about 10, 11 years ago. That was the same situation, that manufacturers starting their own brand. Either for the local market, but the trend is also with the European buyer and product manager that as a manufacturer, you also should show your own vision on design and research and development on today's needs of the fashion industry. Creating a visual identity. Well, as mentioned, we prepared for the staff a very extended version of a brand identity, so they could use that as an example. And here, here they, sorry, here they did a visual identity for a Pakistani company. And importance of building a brand, even if you are a manufacturer, is important because the transparency has become so important in our industry that also results that branding is needed also for the production partners. Because if you look, for example, to a website from Patagonia, and you go to the web shop and look for, let's say, a sweater, you can immediately look for where the sweater has been made, which and even the location of the factory you can find on that website. Designing a collection, designing a logo is what we see here in sportswear for the local market in Pakistan. And then the next one, which is interesting, the digitization of fabrics as a service. Not only the digital design is important, but to digitize fabrics, yeah, you have to do it. Otherwise, you cannot work with the 3D design software, including the composition and so, and the several all kind of details are mentioned here in the middle of the slide. The next. Yeah, as you can see here, that designing a 3D collection, it has really many benefits because you save on the amount of samples you need to provide. The 3D animations are much more realistic than a two-dimensional drawing, and it all saves footprint, and it is better for the environment. But you can also use it for a photo shoot here, as you can see in the first picture. And another one where you can see much more about how the fabric is looked, yeah, the characteristic of the fabric. And the final picture of my part is here, that you can see very clear actually how the actual garment should look like, what kind of zippers are used, etc., etc. So in the visual communication, it saves really a lot. And it's very good that this that the center has developed itself by yeah, bringing in this excellent service. So that was my part.
Great. I'll take over here. Thanks a lot, Nima, for the kind introduction and inviting us, and Rens and Leontien. And I want to comment a little bit before I go into the benchmark study that we did. Want to look back a little bit on what Leontien just said, because I just want to emphasize how important design is and how good a choice this was to start with, to go into detail, to build this center as a way to help the Pakistani garment industry to upgrade. Because from our vantage point at the International Apparel Federation, of course, we look at many different countries, we look at the industry as a whole, and there you can see really that design sits at the heart of upgrading the industry, because there's so many things it does. And as Leontine says, of course, yes, it's a service to clients. You can upgrade your service and therefore perhaps get a better price if you can offer more services in addition to the actual product, the value added services. But it's also an opportunity to start one's own brand, which can of course really help to get out of getting stuck in a low cost service environment. But if you look at the changes that are taking place in the industry, and the 3D designs and are a perfect example of that. If what you can see, the digitalization makes it possible to work more in teams online, cutting across the entire supply chain. So if you are a supplier and you have the design capability, and you have the 3D design capability, you can actually participate in a brand's design and product development process, and make yourself as a supplier much more important, indispensable, because then for the brand it becomes a lot more difficult to untangle yourself from this particular supplier, because it's become part of its own business processes. And these business processes, with these teams cutting across the supply chains, they are key to speeding up the cycles in a smart way, and they're key to ensuring that the supply chain delivers the right product at the right time, so that, as Rens was saying, we don't lose all that money in discounts, because the long supply chains where something's produced or designed 1.5 years before, only to find out that the taste has shifted to another color, to another design, meaning that you're stuck with a lot of the garments that you were so proud of, that the whole supply chain has painstakingly produced. You know, that risk gets reduced considerably if you can produce something very close to the moment that you are selling it. Digitalization is important there. Design is an integral part, and the design capability of the manufacturers is really important. Then, understanding that, this is, I think, a very good example of what we wanted to explore further, based on our absolute conviction that the institutional infrastructure, the organizations that are there supporting the garment industries, are very important to the competitiveness of the industry. So building a design center has a big multiplying factor in helping the garment industry in Pakistan move to a next level. So what we did in the benchmark, rather than only look at like the symptoms of these investments and say, okay, Pakistan industry is not so good in this, very good in this, and compared to other industries, we were also looking, maybe particularly in the benchmark, at how is the institutional infrastructure and what business organizations, cluster organizations are there in other countries that hold some lessons for the Pakistani situation. So that was what we did in the benchmark, to draw lessons from cluster organizations. This is maybe what is truly a cluster organization, is quite a technical definition. In the garment industry, there's actually few pure cluster organizations. So rather we looked at associations, industry associations, performing that role, acting as a cluster organization. And then we made a benchmark. Of course, we couldn't benchmark against the whole world, So a selection was made in this project. And by the way, I'm focusing, of course, on garments now, but in this benchmark project, there were other sectors, the surgical instrument sector, leather sector, and automotive sector. But we're now looking at garments. We all use the same criteria, and using those criteria, we selected 3 organizations in 3 different countries to draw lessons from. And these were in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, and in Morocco. And would go too far to really explain how we made that selection, but it allowed us to have a good diverse mix of organizations. Beforehand, we already had a feeling a little bit that they would hold different lessons for us. So also standardized across this benchmark project were the range of capabilities that we were looking at, such as public relations, marketing, such as the networking competence of the cluster organization or the association, skills development, developing member services that has a double role. It creates a financially stronger organization, and of course it helps the companies with particular services. Excellence in innovation, R&D, driving the innovative power of the industry, and online visibility, but particularly in relation, and not so much as saying, okay, we are a great cluster organization, look at us, but more on behalf of the industry, promoting the industry as a whole in the whole world. Then let's look, and that's all I'll do. Let's look at those 3 countries, and I've selected some of those lessons that stood out. We looked at the organization BGMEA, the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturing Association. This is a very large organization. The garment industry is 85% of Bangladesh exports. So I think BGMEA has at least 400 staff. So this is sometimes difficult to compare, but still you can look at what have they really focused on. They really have focused on learning, setting up the BGMEA University of Fashion Technology, and this BUFT has really invested in the latest technology and also attaching themselves to a global platform of fashion technology institutes. BGMEA, one back, BGMEA is really invested, and they've had to, following the Rana Plaza disaster. They were sort of drawn into it, but they have also really invested in becoming part of global organizations like the Accord in fire and building safety, but also other, like with the ILO Better Work program, other global programs that then help to give clients assurances about the ability of the Bangladesh industry to control certain risks. So those are 2 things that could be learned from Bangladesh. Then Sri Lanka, very different, of course, small country, relatively smaller industry there, but they have done a fantastic job in what we could say country marketing, positioning the Sri Lankan apparel industry as sustainable and technologically savvy. Of course, you can't do that if none of your members are actually sustainable or technologically savvy, but there are certainly some outstanding Sri Lankan companies, and those have really been leveraged their work in promoting the image of the industry as a whole. And the association, JAV, has done a lot of work on that. And at the same time, and maybe because also of that, through thought leadership and practical programs. They have been working on making that message true, not just for the largest and most well-known Sri Lankan firms, but also investing together in through training programs and lots of seminars in the other smaller and medium-sized companies. And then the last organization we looked at was from Morocco. Interestingly enough, the association actually set up a true cluster organization, and its director was trained in Europe through an EU-funded program that was aimed at training managers of cluster organizations, which really helped this particular director to immediately form an international network of colleagues to exchange and share ideas. This was really set up to focus on new business, small emerging business in Morocco, to have a different type of organizational structure to support that. Many young people involved, and they're building, and this looks quite like ADRC. They're building member services on digitalization, on sustainability, but also actually using machines like digital printers that they bought and that can be used by some of these small startup companies that don't have the funds to invest in those machines yet. So they have like a service center. The cluster organization also serves as a service center for new business to use machine time, and also do like tests and experiments on using other fabrics, using more sustainable fabrics. And one example is a design-driven denim laundry laboratory that they set up, also in that sort of shared service center where startups can do because it's a denim is one of the specialties in Tunisia, and there they can experiment with more sustainable ways of finishing the denim fabrics and the denim garments. So this was just I think an exercise fetching lessons from other organizations that can be used then to further strengthen even in Pakistan the institutional infrastructure, industry infrastructure that and that can be carried out by an organization like ADRC. ADRC can be extended to carry on some of these activities that we identified in other countries. I think, having explained a little bit about that benchmark, just a moment to pass back the word to you, Rens, or to Leontien to wrap up.
Oh, well, I hope everything was clear. Here you see the last slide, which is a very nice question. What was asked and forecasted in 2018 might not be, or might already have been developed, and might not be the questions that we should ask for the near future right now. Maybe we should, set up a new project in 2022. But well, the change of the industry is is going quite rapidly, and I think words like circularity, and maybe that's a last wrap up. What will come in place, we expect, is a whole new industry in the coming tens of years, in which we will collect our used clothes, we will sort them, and we will try to recycle them and make new clothes out of the old stuff. But that means we have to put up a whole new supply chains, the chain of materials, probably bringing them back to the producing countries, or we still don't know how we're going to do this. And these are the real challenges for the next years, for the future. And ADRC will have to develop with that, I believe. But Nima, it's 3 o'clock. Maybe there are some questions.
Sure.
Are we running out of time?
Well, thank you very much, Frans, Leontine, and Matthias. This was, again, even for me that I have been involved in this, it was a very interesting presentation. I hope our colleagues also found it interesting. So without further ado, I would like to open the floor for further questions and answers that we may have. We are extending the meeting, the awareness session by 10-15 minutes to be able to address the questions. So from our side, we can extend it as much as we have questions. So the floor is yours. Please, I see Jin Jiang's hands up. Please, you can go first.
Okay, thanks Nima, and thanks speakers for the very excellent presentation. I learned a lot. I think ADRC could play a very creative role in the industry in Pakistan. I have one specific question: how this ADRC research center will be working with SMEs, and how the SMEs can be developed as a working mechanism, be linked with ADRC closely for the business, different business model, which is I would like to understand a little bit more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe a first answer from my side. PRECMIA, our colleagues in Pakistan, the Pakistan Association is very much involved with the ADRC. So it is up to them, you know, to get their members into the ADRC. And one example was already mentioned, you know, the sustainability department within PRECMIA works together with ADRC. So ADRC has to do its own marketing, of course, but on the other hand, it is PRECMIA that hires the people. So it is PRECMIA also, you know, that can keep the SMEs going to ADRC for more help. So the local association or the local cluster organization, however you want to call them, is very important, because as we need networks, you know, the ADRC needs a network and needs strength in marketing and branding itself, because otherwise it will not reach the SMEs, and that might be a problem. You know, marketing is hard. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. But the later part is that how SMEs can develop the working mechanism to be linked with ADRC. Probably is not from ADRC side, but it's more from industry association side. I'm not sure you have some understanding on that.
Please repeat that question.
I mean, the question is that how the local government SME can be linked with ADRC. How they be? I mean, ADRC.
Yeah. Well, already during the project, we expected that the awareness of ADRC would grow within the SMEs, and that SMEs would address the ADRC with their questions, and that we from Holland or from other places, you know, from the experts that we know, that we could help ADRC answering the questions that the SMEs would put in. This because all kind of factors had a very slow startup of the center, but as soon as the first people came in into the ADRC, you know, they started asking questions, of course. How am I going to address a bias from European countries? What's going on in the United States in a certain market? And that's so it's a two-sided way. You know, the ADRC should provide their services and and be active in the marketing. But from the other side, as soon as an SME comes in, the ADRC should have a network so they can provide for the answers that the SMEs for the questions that they raise. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's really a client relation. Yeah.
Yeah, I understood. But anyway, thank you very much for the presentation and a very nice initiative.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Farooq, you're next, please, with your question.
Thank you, Nima. Extremely interesting presentation, and congratulations with the great success. And I'm very interested because we're doing a little bit similar activities on garment fashion, branding, and design, including digital design, and also established a center which we call Space 59, which also includes all the services which were listed for this center. Congratulations, is definitely maybe a topic for an additional meeting, maybe with your team and with our team, which we can also share the presentation. But where we also what I wanted to ask from your experience, and I think this is one of the main topics when it comes to the centers that we're creating. Of course, I mean, you have a beauty to support already well-established Pakistani garment industry, which is also enjoying the supply of the locally produced resources. I mean, from fabrics to trims, I believe. Yeah, it's a huge economy of scale country as well, you know, there in Armenia, what we're doing, it's a little bit different. It's like 3 million population, and we are fully oriented towards the exports. But when it comes to the sustainability of this type of the centers, it's a little bit like lengthy process. So I wanted just you to maybe share your experience how this center is funded. Could you convince the industries to pay and financially sustain the activities, the services of this center? So not to make it long, that would be my question. Thank you.
Well, yes, we try to convince them, of course, and I don't know what the situation right now is, but because we just ended the project, and we are expecting Pragmia to take over from here. Maybe there will be more funding from the governmental side. I don't know, but it has Pragmia. Our colleagues have had a big role in setting up, and they have been investing in the center. So we expect them to sustain the center. On the other hand, it would be ideal, of course, if the center would really be able to sustain itself by attracting enough clients. And there you need some good examples of projects where SMEs say, look, okay, it has cost us a little bit, but we earned the money back because we invested in the right thing. But that takes time. And as innovation moves on, the services of ADRC move on. So the problem is it's repeating a problem, of course.
So we might eventually indeed have a meeting and share the experience, because we could have tried to convince the companies, although the group is very small, but they now believe, government believes, companies believe.
Yeah.
This is very important. Yeah.
What we sometimes see in innovation projects is that we set up things for SMEs, and that the big companies see the importance and they run away with it. That's the tricky thing.
Yeah, it's like, if I can add, it's like association management, where you have to constantly find the balance, and you need, I think, the sort of buy-in from the whole industry, right, from the big players and the small players, and not allow one group to run away with it, or to leave the funding only to the smallest players, which cannot carry it. So you need that sort of sense of joint industry ownership. At the same time, you also need people running it that are commercially astute enough to also get from the market some interesting assignments. So not all the assignments have to be focused on like the broad development of the industry, or sometimes you have to have commercially smart people that also look at the bottom line and that think, okay, we need to spend 20-30% of our time just satisfying this one client, not the most logical client, but okay, they take care of the income, brings in the cash. Like designers themselves often work, starting designers, that they mix what they really want with what they need to do at the moment. So those things, that the balance is important.
And Matthias, maybe from my side, if I can add to that, and you are sitting in the International Apparel Federation, and you have this oversight of what's happening in the global industry. But what we see is that of course, moving away from being mainly a supplier to being an original brand and design owner is a shift in the industry, is a transformation in the industry. So initiatives such as ADRC can play a role, but certainly they are not the single elements in this transformation. And there, of course, is long-term, it requires a strategic interventions. It requires also the whole industry and government partnership for moving in that direction. So to me, it seems that, going to the question that Farouk mentioned, and also looking at whether ADRC will become financially sustainable, I think it is important to set the bar not too high, because it is not only up to the ADRC to be able to become financially sustainable in the short run. Of course, that is a good objective to have, but at the same time, some supporting factors also need to be in place. The PREGMIA, the government support, and the whole change of attitude and capacity at the local producers to be able to use the services of the ADRC. Yeah. Thank you, Farouk. I see Lorenz, please.
Yeah, I keep my hand up, but actually I had the same question. How do you reach the sustainable financial sustainability? Actually, did you put a price on the services? Because it's very difficult to give it for free and then to think at, oh, how much does it cost? And to come back with this. So did you already from day one try to set up a price, try to put the conditions that are more marketable than, service for free?
No, it wasn't for free. We helped them setting up their price strategy in the beginning with the general manager. Yeah, the funny thing is that the general manager resigned, but we actually also didn't need him, so that we were saving costs there. And yeah, because and if they need some more disciplines which they don't have in-house at the moment, they outsource. Yeah, and they.
But this is you for your service, but for the
ADRC
service.
For the ADRC.
Remember. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they also bill it. They try to set up prices to what they do to start on a business basis.
Yeah, and we had some example of a local company in Lahore, and we knew about their pricing. Mm-hmm. So we said we should definitely be below that, and that also had to do that that local company they offered services to bigger companies, and yeah, we needed to focus on the small medium enterprises. And well, yeah, so far it works.
Okay.
They're still there since end of 2019.
Okay.
I think, Lorenz, the question that you ask is interesting, and I feel that a lot of work is also on the side of the enterprises, whether they would be trusting the services of the ADRC. Whether they see a value in purchasing these collections locally. Of course, price is one element. The most important element is that whether this design in the end would be able to sell in the European market that is the target. So a key that is related to capacity of such design centers is to be able to translate the trends into collections and do it properly in a way that once they sell it, the producer would be able to export and then would come back. And it is a challenge, because when sitting at a design studio in Lahore, you have only access to the trends only through online resources and through research, while you're not really at the heart of where the fashion is being kind of changing on a daily basis. So there's a fundamental challenge here. But I want to also highlight what Matthias said, that the digital technologies are not only helping the supply chains to be efficient, but it's changing the business completely. You see that the buyer and the producer are sitting together on that design. Yeah. So I think in this changing context, perhaps some of these issues will be a little bit less challenging, but of course it needs a change of attitude and working and business models to be able to benefit from the advances in the digital technology to overcome this challenge of design, that you are far away from where the fashion is changing, and you have to still be able to understand that, translate that into collections with a good price that can be sold and then eventually get to be exported.
Yeah. There are people, if I may add, who are talking about the competitive model that we come from and the collaborative model in the supply chain we are going, because we need to make the risks lower through the whole of the supply chain, and you can't leave one of the parts of the chain out, because the chain breaks. And this is really about interdependency and about diminishing risks through the whole supply chain, and not for one of the parties fighting the other parties, because in the end they all lose. And maybe that maybe that idea is growing. Thank you.
Great. I don't see any more hands raised, and so if there's no other question from colleagues, in the interest of time, I would like to thank you on behalf of UNIDO, Rens, Leontine, and Matthias for this for your time to present to us. And to our colleagues, I would like to say that, of course, I would be very happy, and you have contacts of the three guests that we had, so you're more than welcome to contact them directly. Some of us are working directly in the textile and apparel industry, and I hope that the work that we have started here together can continue through different projects and through new partnerships together. Certainly, we would benefit from the network and partnership and the capacities at your institutions. At the same time, the member states that we are working with, industries that we are working with, would be also benefiting from the technical assistance that can be provided. So thank you very much again, and to my colleagues, and I wish you all a nice evening.
Thank you, Nima.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nima. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, everyone.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.